Hi, everyone. It's Tony Martinez. I'm here from the CDPE. Thank you so much for joining me here today. We have another one of our world famous or semi-world famous updates. But thank you for joining me. We have folks here from different areas of the country. We're going to make this fast and furious. I'm going to share some stats with you, some information that hopefully you'll find useful and you can start applying immediately. The session is being recorded, so it will be sent out to everyone that registered later on this afternoon. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat area. I will pause toward the very end to go ahead and open it up for any questions that you may have. I ask that you stay muted throughout the presentation so we can avoid having any distractions and all that good stuff. I did ask what areas are represented here. It's kind of a light audience here today. I don't know what's going on, but I think it's already summertime. It's supposed to be spring, but it's acting like summertime because almost everyone has taken off and gone someplace else. So we see the great state of Texas is represented here. Thank you so very much. So let's go ahead and get started. And I would like to thank our friends at Four Rivers Association of Realtors, also from Texas, for helping to share information with their membership about today's session. A little bit about myself, just very quickly. I am a Florida licensed real estate broker. So I am in the field. I know what's going on out there every single day. I've been teaching on the subject of short sales now for more years than I can remember. Last count, I've trained at least 15,000 agents on this topic. And that doesn't include all the other topics, so just this particular topic. And we acquired the CDPE brand, the designation, a couple of years ago. So my firm is also the owner of the CDPE designation. For some of you that I know, I can recognize some of the names. I know we have some CDPE members on the call right now, but if you've never heard of the CDPE, we are a private designation. We're not affiliated with NAR or any of the other associations, but the initials stand for Certified Distressed Property Expert. What we have been doing since 2008 is teaching agents how to engage in the distressed property market, how to approach individuals that are in foreclosure, facing foreclosure, and they don't know what to do. We want to be that advocate. We want to be that individual that goes out there and says, you know, have you explored every option for possibly staying in your home? And when those have been explored and maybe they're unsuccessful, we want to be the one that can possibly help these folks exit with dignity. So we're excited that the movement is back. We're at about 2,000 members right now. And my belief is this is just a tip of the iceberg. When we were in our heyday, and we were the fastest growing designation ever in the history of real estate, we got up to almost 48,000 members. I think it's going to happen all over again. That's part of the argument I'm going to make today. So today we're going to cover some stats because I'm entitled to my own opinion, but not my own numbers. I want to share with you what I believe is going to contribute to an increase, I believe a significant increase in the foreclosure count. And then let's switch to talking about the consequences to a consumer when they do go through the foreclosure process. Oftentimes people think, all right, well, I lost my home. At least I got that behind me. I can start over. It's not that simple. There are some long-lasting consequences to these individuals. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate in helping agents to engage them so we can help them avoid these negative consequences. When they have equity and they're in foreclosure, well, that's kind of an easy situation for you as an agent because that's just a regular sale with a twist. However, a certain percentage of homes are currently underwater, and I believe that a significant number of properties in the next 2 to 5 years are going to be underwater, meaning that they're going to be owing more on the property than they can sell the property for. This is where a potential short sales comes in. And what we have right now is a whole new generation of agents that really haven't gone through that type of market and are not familiar with what a short sale is. I want to give you a little taste of what I teach in our full course, Sales 101. so you can be kind of keeping an eye out for what's happening in your market. I don't go longer than an hour. I think an hour is enough. But here's what I do. For about 50 minutes, I give you content. I just ask that maybe the last 7 to 8 minutes, let me share with you how my course, my designation can be a valuable asset to you and helping you to grow your business, helping you to take more listings, helping you to do well financially while you're doing good by others. And I typically don't get any pushback because I say, man, yeah, you taught me a lot in an hour. Go ahead, pitch away. Let me give you my disclaimer. I am not an economist. I've become better at reading charts and numbers and everything else, but I am not approaching this from an economist standpoint. We have plenty of those out there. I just want to show you the things that I've been seeing and paying attention to for the past 2 years. And maybe that will be a different perspective than what you've already heard. This is what I'm not as well. And this is a greater part of our industry. One of the things that I'm the most passionate about, and I'll be very candid with you, it really bothers me, it really gets me upset, is the ignorance in our industry. Because what happens is, as a broker owner, I network with other broker owners, and some of these folks are very successful, offices far bigger than mine. And yet I say to myself, I cannot believe that as intelligent as you are so clueless as what's going on. Because I hear this all the time, Tony, there's no foreclosures. Now, how can anybody with a semblance of intelligence be able to make a comment like that there are no foreclosures? Of course there are foreclosures. Now, we may not see the numbers, we may not have the numbers right now that we had in 2008, 9 and 10, and I pray that we never do, but you can't make a blanket statement like there are no foreclosures. Foreclosures have been around as long as there's been home ownership. The question is, are you aware of how many there are in your own market area? And are you and or your agents doing anything about this, or are you letting these folks go unserviced? And in situations where these folks do reach out to a realtor, they're reaching out to someone other than you. Well, headlines came out today about the recent sales. Well, our sales in real estate for April came in at an 11-year low. 11-year low. Now, this may not apply to your specific area. I'm in South Florida, and one could think that there's no issues in the world here in South Florida because things be going great. But we're looking at this from a national perspective, and sales are down 3.4%, represents an 11-year low. Now, this article at the very bottom, this was caught my attention. Distressed properties and forced property sales are virtually non-existent. I'm the first one to admit that the numbers are not significant to the point that we should be running out there screaming, it's the end of the world. But when you read something like this, or the typical real estate agent reads something like this, what does it lead them to believe? There's no market there. There's no opportunity there. There's no niche there. There's no segment there. And this bothers me. It bothers me because I've been around a long time. And I was around in 2006 and 2007 when we were having one of the best markets of all time. And when that word housing bubble was being tossed around, are we in a bubble? Are we expecting issues? The one entity, the one group, organization that vehemently opposed that we had any issues at all were realtors. We just got high on our own supply, and we would not admit that there's an issue there or an issue coming. I'm the kind of person that when I see our leaders in the realtor community say, we got nothing to worry about, I get worried. It's kind of like I'm with the government and I'm here to help. When you hear those words, be afraid, be very afraid. You make up your own mind, but I believe that I know what's coming. And I'm preparing my agents for it. I'm preparing my group for it. And I'm hoping that you're going to do the same. My belief is distressed properties are low-hanging fruit. I've been saying this for the past 2 years. I'll probably say it for the next 2 or 3 years because they are. And here's a simple reason why. It's not a fancy designation. It's not a fancy, sexy niche. Luxury is sexy. Distressed properties is not. So we don't get a lot of attention. We don't get a lot of press. And what happens is a lot of agents don't see how much opportunity they're walking past or stepping over. Yes, it is low-hanging fruit because a typical real estate agent is afraid of distressed properties. They don't understand it. I know agents that will not even show a distressed property to a buyer. They won't even show them to a buyer because they're afraid. What if they want to place an offer on this? I don't know what to do. Opportunities exist every single day for someone to seize on this. Now, let's talk about my meme here, because this is one of the areas I get into a lot of discussions, arguments with. Well, Tony, there's not going to be any foreclosures because we have equity. Do you understand the idiocy of that comment? And forgive me if I'm offending you. I guess you'll learn to deal with it. I've learned to deal with my honesty. See, it's one thing to say, Tony, I don't believe that there's going to be a lot of short sales because there seems to be a lot of equity in the market. I would agree with that. See, that's an intelligent comment. You're right. There's more equity in the market today than there was in 2008 and 9. So it's a very viable argument to say, well, we may not have the need for a lot of short sales given the equity. But there is a significant difference between having equity and being able to afford to make your monthly payments. And this is the argument that I make every single day. Yes, there are tens of thousands, millions of Americans out there with some level of equity in their property. But if God forbid they lose their job, most of them have nothing in savings. Most of them have been living paycheck to paycheck. Chances are they will not be able to make their next monthly payment. And that's just some of the issues we're going to talk about today. So separate it. You can have equity and be facing foreclosure. You cannot have equity and be facing foreclosure. This is what I train agents to be able to engage in. You'll be able to help folks either way. Here's some stats. For April, and I use adamdata.com. You can go to adamdata.com and you can go ahead and see all. I usually go there. I'll tell you what, normally I try to schedule my updates like after the 9th or 10th of the month, because by that time they usually have their monthly numbers out. And then I can go glean and I can go ahead and pick the numbers. But for April, we saw a dip in foreclosure filings, foreclosure activity. Now, the article, and you can go read it for yourself, does mention that April typically is a month that's a little bit lower in filings for whatever reason, but the number was down against the month before, but up 8% against a year ago. So those are April numbers nationwide. Now, in terms of what states have the highest foreclosure rates, well, Illinois is number 1, followed by Maryland, New Jersey, South Carolina, and Delaware. What we're seeing is I'm getting calls all the time from California, from Texas, Illinois for sure, Michigan, Ohio, New York, New Jersey. These are the primary areas where agents are starting to notice more foreclosure activity. Well, for agents that are seeking REOs, so the other day I spoke to an REO panel. I was asked to speak to a panel, and I think there was like 20, 25 agents on the call. And these are all agents that back in the day, many of them were big time REO agents. Now, if you're not familiar with REO, it stands for real estate owned. That means that once a bank, a lender has foreclosed on a property, and in most cases, they end up taking the property back, they will list that property for sale with a local real estate agent as an REO. Now, back in 2008, 9, and 10, this made the careers of many agents back then, because the ones that were fortunate to get in at the right time had hundreds and hundreds of REO listings. Now, that market still exists, but it's greatly reduced. Because let's face it, foreclosures have been greatly reduced for one reason and one reason primarily, and that's because we had a moratorium. We had a national moratorium against foreclosures. If the banks can't foreclose, the banks can't put out any REOs. My argument to these REO agents is, guys, I don't think you're looking in the right place right now, because your numbers are way down, because in April, there were only 2,900 properties that were foreclosed and became REO. Now, I said only, and then I said, wait a minute, let me rephrase that. That number may be exceptionally low when you look at it from a national perspective, but it also means that 2,919 families lost their home. I think that needs to be discussed, because let me ask you this: how many of those individuals were approached by a knowledgeable real estate professional and given all of these options to exit the property with dignity, and they chose to let the bank take the house? Think about that. See how absurd that is? Why would they do that? Why would someone present it with those facts? Now, I'm not saying that you wouldn't present it and they still make that dumb decision, because emotionally they're not okay. The vast majority of folks don't know what to do. They don't act because they simply don't know the laws, don't know the process, don't know the options. I got to believe that if these individuals have been approached and it's like, hey, look, it looks like you can't stay in the home. I'm sorry. I wish I could help you save your home, but you can't stay here. You can't afford the payments. There's no way you can work out a modification with the bank. Why don't we do this? It looks like you have some equity in the property. Let's get it listed and sold so that you can get out from underneath this debt. You can avoid all of the negative consequences of foreclosure. You can start your life over again, and you can walk away with some cash. Now, with that simple dialogue, how many listings do you think I would get any given week if I just knocked on enough doors or made enough phone calls? And for those that are underwater, you just say, look, same script, except now in your situation, unfortunately, you're underwater. That means that you owe more on the property that it can be sold for. In the hands of a normal real estate agent, they couldn't help you, but I am trained. I am a CDPE. I know exactly what to do. I can help you try to get a short sale approved through the bank. And this is where training can go ahead and meet motivation and help you get out there. I really have never had a taste for REO. You know what I do? I get a lot of agents that were REO agents back in the day and said, Tony, I never want to do that again. I never want to be the one representing the bank, going there and then evicting the individuals, kicking them out of their homes. I don't want to go through that. Emotionally, it was very devastating to a lot of these professionals. Now, I believe that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. Now, I have people that agree with me, and some of the people I really don't want them to agree with me, because I think that there's too much going on the internet. There's too much on YouTube. There's too much on Twitter. That's really, I think that they're just too sensationalized. And I do videos, but I don't do videos that start with, the world is ending, the market is crashing. And you know which ones I'm talking about. And yeah, those get a lot of views and they get a lot of likes and they get a lot of people looking into them. But that's not what I'm pitching. That's not what I'm selling. What I'm saying is, if you really took a step back and said, what could contribute to more foreclosures coming, then you would probably agree with some of the things I'm about to say right now, or all of the items I'm about to bring up right now. For example, I mentioned that we were under a moratorium for almost 2 years. Those are done. Did you know that there were areas of the country like LA that still had a moratorium in LA County, I think through April? I can't keep track of all the various moratoriums that happen at a city or county level, but I believe that if you do a little research in your county, in your state, in your city, none of these still exist. What does that mean? That means it's no longer hands off for the lenders. The lenders can, in fact, initiate foreclosure action against these individuals. Doesn't mean that the lenders are going to rush to the courthouse to make it happen, but the lenders, the servicers, are legally required to initiate foreclosure activity if they have not been able to communicate with the homeowners and have had no success in getting anything arranged with them. They owe it to their clients, right? The note holders, the investors, to initiate some type of action to make this come together. Now, if you know what the feds are going to do, then you know what? Tell me when you're going to play the lotto and what numbers, and I'll play them too, because I don't have that kind of crystal ball. This is all over the place. Ever since I started studying this, I've never seen a scenario where there's so many varying opinions on what the feds are going to do. We know that they have been raising the rates consistently every single month. Why? They need to get inflation under control. What's inflation at right now? Well, last number was 4.9%. Is that where the feds want us to be? No. What number have they stated they want to get it down to? 2%. I'm not speculating. I am telling you what they have said. We want to get it down to 2%. So what have they been doing? Raising the rates consistently. What happened with this last raise? It was 0.25%, 25 basis points. Now, what are they going to do next month? Are they going to raise it again? You tell me. Look at the factors. The economy is still going strong. People are still spending money. Inflation is still not under control. But, however, we have a banking crisis now. And this has reared its ugly head over the past, 60 days now. Is this going to mean that they're going to ease up? They're not going to raise the rates? If they are, not as much. Are they even thinking about not raising them at all or even lowering them? We don't know. But here's what we do know. What they have done has definitely had a negative impact on our industry. Interest rates are significantly higher now than they were during the pandemic. I noticed two sides to that coin. For folks that have done their homework, our interest rates right now are at or slightly above what they were traditionally prior to the pandemic. But people got very, very comfortable with the incredibly low 2.5 rates, 2.75 rates, 3%. And it was a sticker shock for a lot of these folks to go ahead and accept the fact that I can't get those rates anymore. I think we are not done with the rate increases. I think we're going to see more. I could be wrong, but it is definitely having a negative impact. Now, because interest rates are higher, we have a different challenge now. You have individuals that are sitting on properties right now. They refinanced during the pandemic. They have an amazingly low interest rate. They would like to upgrade. They would like to go ahead and sell and buy something else, but they're never going to get the interest rate that they have right now. And they're thinking, do I want to go from 3% to 7%? Do I want to see my payments double? And these are some of the challenges that we're all facing as real estate professionals across the country. Will we have a recession? This has been debated for so long. I'm exhausted thinking about it because we technically did last year. We did. There were 2 consecutive quarters that we had negative GDP growth. So that is a recession. But you couldn't tell by the way Americans are spending. And we continue to spend. This is the part that's amazing to me and is mind-boggling to everybody, is we have all of the pieces are in place for a recession, except the hiring is still there, employment is strong, and Americans are still spending money like drunken sailors. So it makes you wonder, will we enter it? But we're seeing some signs. We're seeing some signs. A lot of the major corporations are preparing. The layoffs have started. See, this is the thing you got to keep an eye on. This is how what affects my segment of the market. Typically, when recession hits, we're going to see an uptick in unemployment. That's just the reality. We've seen layoffs now in several sectors. We saw in a major wave for the tech sector, folks in California and Silicon Valley, we're seeing that there. Now we're seeing it go through a lot of other technology and service companies. What's going to happen? My feeling is if you talk about the possibility of a recession long enough, you make it materialize. And employers are preparing. I ask you, and maybe you give me a thumbs up on the screen, how many of you are spending less now than you were spending a year ago? How many of you going into the summer are planning to spend a little less on vacations and trips this summer than you did last summer? And for those of you that think beyond just the next couple of months and you're already thinking end of the year and you're thinking the holidays, how many of you already say, oh, hold on, we're not going to anywhere near spend that kind of money like we did the year before? And this is what's happening. And I believe this is going to contribute to the unemployment rate. Consumer debt is at an all-time high. I believe the number is now over $17 trillion. Americans are up to their eyeballs in debt. We are maxing out our credit cards, and we're seeing delinquencies start to come up. We're seeing delinquencies start to happen in the area of car loans. You see what's happening with the subprime car loans market on how it is tightening up like crazy because of the risk factors associated with it? These are the things that you have to go ahead and be aware of, is that consumers are still spending money, but where is it coming from? And I believe a lot of them are just racking up the credit card debt. Personal savings, non-existent. Look at this chart. Look at this actual survey. And by the way, something I don't have in front of me here, but I will share. I believe the number is 64%. 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Think about that. 64% live paycheck to paycheck. Only 43% of Americans, if confronted with an emergency expense of $1,000 or more, have that $1,000 sitting in their savings account. You tell me if that doesn't cause you to have some concern, because this is what people are facing. People could be sitting on equity, everything could be great, they get laid off, the very next monthly payment is due, they may, probably not, have enough money to cover that mortgage payment, but beyond that, they don't have it. Okay, housing bubble. Well, we've already seen in some areas of the country, the prices are going down. Some areas, prices are holding and actually going up. What you need to do is your due diligence to find out which area you're in. We're seeing areas of California, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, where prices are starting to come down. Now, one of the things that you need to be aware of, I was having a really good conversation with someone from Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. And she said, you know, earlier in the year, I pulled up how many properties were in the MLS that were short sales, and there were hardly any at all. I went in last week and there was a significant increase in those numbers. And she started doing some digging, and she found is that most of these people bought their homes in the last 2 years. So I want you to think about this for a second. What percentage of individuals that bought their home in the last 2 years bought it at the very top of the market with very little to no down payment, and any reduction in pricing at all could put them in a situation where they're borderline, if not already underwater? These are some of the things that I present and ask you to keep an eye out for. And remember, equity is not the same as being able to afford your payments. Now, speaking of equity, this is an older article. I think this was from fourth quarter of last year. But even then, we're already seeing some troubling signs. 270,000 home buyers they bought in 2022 are already underwater on their mortgages. Now, let that sink in for a second. Now, of course, someone that came in with a traditional, 20 or 30% down, they probably don't have anything to worry about. How many people bought with FHA? If you're in a market that's as reliant as FHA as a lot of them are, you know that they came in with only 3.5% down. If they bought with VA, right, a VA loan, then they probably put 0% down. So it doesn't take much of a reduction in price to see whatever equity they have vanish. Now, when you add to that the fact that they have started to miss payments, so the missed payments are being added to the back of the loan, you see where I'm going with this? In the third quarter of last year, we saw reduction in median price nationally of 2.6%. That was one quarter. That represented $1.3 trillion in lost equity in just one quarter. When I get into discussions with people, it's usually with people that haven't researched their numbers. Because at the end of the day, if we're seeing median prices come down, and we are seeing them come down in the cities and areas that I mentioned, that represents equity that vanished, that's gone. Now, you want me to scare you a little bit more? What about people that have already tapped the equity in their homes because they've been using their homes as an ATM? You know that during the pandemic, many people refinanced their homes once or twice, maybe even more. Do you think they only did it for rate and terms, or that many of these folks went ahead and pulled cash out every time they refinance? How much equity is there now? Think about how much home equity lines of credits are being pushed now. Now that there's hardly any refinancing, what have the big lenders gone to? They're pushing HELOCs, right? So now you can borrow against your equity to about 90% loan to value. You know what's scary? When I see an ad for a HELOC and it says, borrow now before your prices go down. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, this is insane. You're encouraging people to take out pretty much most of the equity they have so that when prices do come down, you're now going to put them in an underwater situation if they had to sell. But look for those ads. You've seen them and you will see them. That kind of stuff is happening every single day. Yet no one's really talking about this or paying attention to this. And it's very scary. You know, something else too, and I'm sorry for being the harbinger of all this news, but it's just a fact. You know, I don't know about your area, but in Florida, we got people struggling with insurance premiums now, payments. They've gone insane. Now they're going after everyone that's got a roof that's older than 10 years old. We've seen insurance premiums go, forget about double, sometimes 5, 10 times the amount. Now think about this. Because of inflation, associations are paying more to get their grass cut and for water and for utilities and everything else. So what are they doing with those extra expenses? They're passing them on to the homeowners. So the homeowner is being squeezed from all different sides, right? You're not paying more for your mortgage because most people got a fixed rate, but you're paying more for property taxes, right? You're paying more for association dues, for property and casualty insurance. And that doesn't include how much more you're paying right now for utilities, for gas, energy, and for food. How many different ways can the American family be stretched before they get to the breaking point and they simply can't make their payments anymore? Now, again, all these stats and everything, you could go ahead and take a look at. I'm not going to go into this anymore. But yeah, I do believe more foreclosures are coming. Will it be a wave? Will it be a tsunami? Will it be as bad as 2008? Well, let's take a look at this little image right here. You see this huge tsunami here? This was 2008. This was a 100-foot wave coming to homeowners that were standing on this rock. That's what it felt like to them. When people ask me, can we expect another 2008? I go, I don't know. But let me ask you something. What if it's the same rock, different homeowners, I hope, but it's only a 20-foot tsunami coming their way? Should they feel blessed, fortunate that it's only a 20-footer and not a 100-footer? Or should they be bracing for impact? Because at the end of the day, size doesn't matter when you're facing a 20-footer versus a 100-footer. And every single day, someone's facing that 20-footer right now. So regardless of how bad it may or may not get, there's people losing their homes right now that you can be engaging in. Equity or no equity, doesn't matter. Engage them. Opportunities exist in any market. In 2008, when the world was coming apart, real estate agents that embraced distressed properties, many of them had their best production years ever because they weren't afraid. They took advantage of the opportunities. They grew their businesses because they were able to help distressed homeowners avoid foreclosure. We played a major role in this, and we're going to do it again because our movement is back and agents are now coming to us saying, I got to get back in. I'm seeing a lot of the signs. Let me share some stuff with you that I teach during the course. Here's my gift to you. When you are sitting there across from someone that's losing their home, you have to be equipped. You have to have enough arrows in your quiver that you can combat different arguments that they have. You need to be able to recite these from memory and be able to just say, you know what, I get it. You're fed up. You're sick of it. You want this to end. But I don't think you're understanding the dire consequences to having a foreclosure on your record. For example, it stays on your record for up to 7 years. 7 years, that's a long time to deal with this. Now, I pride myself on being a great salesperson, and I've learned that selling is really about helping people to arrive at a decision, right? And people will go ahead and usually make decisions for two reasons. They want to obtain joy and pleasure, or they want to avoid pain. I call it the carrot and the stick approach. When I go to someone and I say, listen, the last thing you want is to have a foreclosure on your record for 7 years. And notice I put some, emphasis on 7 years. I'm using the stick approach. You don't want that. And you know what? More often than not, it's going to work. But there's going to be some people that say, man, I don't care. I don't care. I just want this to be done. So then I flip the switch and I say, let me try a different approach. I says, look, I get it. Let me ask you something though. Are you going to be okay with being a renter for the rest of your life? Or do you see yourself at some point wanting to be a homeowner again? What do you think most people are going to say? They say, well, yeah, of course I would like to be a homeowner again. Who wouldn't? Yeah, I thought you say that. So let me ask you this question. Would you like to live with the restriction of not being able to buy again for 5 to 7 years? Because that's how long you'll have to wait to get a typical loan after having a foreclosure on your record. Or having the option of being able to buy again in as little as 2 to 3 years if you let me help you to exercise a short sale on your property. And what happens is what comes very naturally to me is what I do everything possible to impart to my students so that they feel natural and comfortable having these conversations with folks. Do you want your dirty laundry exposed to everyone every time you fill out a credit application? Do you want your credit scores to take a major hit? All of these things are negative consequences of having a foreclosure on your record. But it doesn't stop there. It may cost them from getting the job that they want and need. They may lose the job they have right now because the employer does not allow them to have a foreclosure or bankruptcy on their record. Maybe the current employer doesn't have a problem with it, but now they're looking to change to a different employer. And that employer says, sorry, company policy is that we can't go ahead and do that. There's a lot of jobs out there, professions that you have to have a security clearance in order to engage in that, right? And you're talking military, law enforcement, TSA, contractors, all these things. Well, this is a great thing to know because you may be sitting across the table from someone that has a security clearance. And you ask them, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a pilot. Commercial pilot? Yeah, great. Do you enjoy being a pilot? Of course I do. Do you want to stay being a pilot? And they go, what are you talking about? Well, I'm just wondering if you've spoken with your, what do you call that? Not internal affairs, but, I'm talking about, or whatever. The department that has to do with, the rules and regulations to work there. Yeah. And have you talked to them and they told you what their policy is and have a foreclosure against you? Because many times, if you do have it, it voids out your security clearance. HR, that's what I was thinking about. So this is the kind of stuff that you have to be aware of. See, I can have this conversation naturally with someone and they can go ahead and look at me and say, are you serious? That can happen? Yeah. So what are you telling me? What I'm telling you is have a conversation with them because in your situation, we could do potentially a short sale. And what we have found, I can't guarantee it, but typically, usually a short sale doesn't impact your status when it comes to a security clearance. So last thing you want is to both lose your home and lose your job, right? Yeah. So I would have that conversation with them. Now, certain states, not all, you need to do a little bit of research in your area, but there are states like Texas and Florida and others that allow what is called a deficiency judgment. What does that mean? That means that the lender has a period of time, usually years, to decide to go after the homeowner, the borrower, for any amount that they didn't recover. So this is adding insult to injury because you lost the home. You have all of these other consequences, negative consequences, but on top of that, you may be able to be sued in civil court to pay the lender back for the monies that they didn't collect. So that's huge. And that's something that every agent needs to know and be aware of, whether your state allows for this deficiency judgments or not. Here's something a lot of agents don't know. In a short sale, if not properly negotiated, what did I mean by that? Well, when you go to a bank and you say, hey, bank, will you take this deal and lose some money? It's not just enough to get the bank to say, okay, fine, we'll lose 100,000. That's great when they say we'll do it. You also have to do everything possible to get in writing that they are waiving the right to pursue any action after the fact against those borrowers, a waiver of deficiency. There's some folks out there that have no business negotiating short sales and are not diligent or proficient in this area, and it puts them and their brokers and their customers at risk. Now, for whatever percentage of folks are going to be underwater, and I believe that number for various reasons is going to go up, and are in trouble, they can't make their payments, then if you know what you're doing, you can approach them with the option of listing the property for sale as a short sale. And they don't grow on trees, but if I think that most agents, when they go into a listing presentation, they're up against scenarios where the sweetest fruit are found at the very top, and they didn't even bring a ladder with them. What I love about distressed properties is that you typically don't get into an interview war or battle with other agents. Since other agents are avoiding this like the plague, you typically are speaking directly to the homeowner, who's typically only speaking with one agent. And it gets better because instead of the traditional approach where you're interviewing for the job, no, they are interviewing because they're hoping that you will take them on and help them to avoid foreclosure. It's a complete paradigm shift. Low-hanging fruit, folks, you just have to decide right now that you want to go after it. But before you get too crazy, just understand that a short sale is not a get me out of my mortgage free card. It's for folks that qualify. So here's the thing, and I love teaching this because I love tripping agents up and how many agents really don't know, right? When I ask a very simple question in my classroom and I say, what's the first thing that has to be in place? What's the very first thing that must be in place for you to even consider a short sale? I get primarily incorrect answers. Now, I'll get good answers like, well, they must be in foreclosure. They must have a hardship. I said, guys, these are all good answers, but they're not the right answer. The right answer is you must be underwater. Because the minute you have equity, if there's enough equity there to pay off the loans, to pay off closing costs and your fee, your commission, then that's just a regular sale. Whether they walk away with $1, 1,000, or 10, it's a regular sale. Now, I'm going to give you a tip that's going to help you immensely now. And remember where you got it. For those of you that are taking regular listings right now, and I got to believe most of you in the audience right now, you take regular listings, right? Don't make this mistake, because I'm seeing this all over the country when I go and speak. Agents are listing properties for sale without doing a lien search to make sure that they don't owe more than they think they do. Too many times, agents are being blindsided because they ask the person, well, how much do you owe against the property? And the owner says, well, I owe 200,000, I owe 300,000 on this one loan. The agent never presses. The agent doesn't say, well, are you sure you don't have any other loans against the property? You've never borrowed against your equity. You've never done a modification. You never did a forbearance agreement during the pandemic. Ooh, let's talk about that for a second. This is what really motivated me to get back into short sales and buy the CDPE. 8.5 million Americans took the government's offer, took the government on their offer to not make their monthly payments via a forbearance for a number of months. It started with 6 months, extended to 12 months, extended to 18 months, and then if there were FHA borrowers, it went all the way up to 24 months. Now, let me tell you something. How many, and you, don't raise your hand, because I'm sure that there's at least one or more of you in the audience that said, I'm doing this, because they didn't say prove that you can't make the payments, just don't make the payments, just sign up for it. And then I started putting two and two together and I go, oh, I know what's going to happen. I started looking in the future and I say 3 to 5 years from now, someone's going to go sell their home. And the 20 grand, the 30 grand, the 40 grand that they didn't pay against their mortgage is sitting there as a secondary lien against the property. And they're going to find out when it's too late. Now, tell me if you're not shaking your head right now going, yeah. And that's what's happening every day. I have people telling me in classes, Tony, I represent a buyer. We got 3 days before the closing, and then we find out they're underwater. What? You mean the agent never did a lien search? No. Never marketed it as a short sale, nothing. The agent didn't do their job. Don't be that agent. We know it's President Reagan said it best, trust but verify. When you ask someone how much you owe against the property, how many loans you have against the property, whatever they tell you, okay, great, verify. Get with your title company, your escrow company, and say, run a lien search on these folks. I want to make sure that I don't have any nasty surprises. Well, a short sale is really this simple. Hey, bank, I have a deal for you. If you take this offer, you only lose $100,000 today. What we're doing is we're going up to the bank with this amazing opportunity to lose a significant amount of money. And you're thinking, well, why would the bank even consider doing that? Well, the banks know that the longer this process is drawn out, the more money they're going to end up losing overall. So they can go back and forth and they can try to collect the uncollectible. And a year from now or 6 months from now, the opportunity to lose 100,000 sounded like a really good deal, because now they're looking at losing 140,000, 150,000. So it's really about numbers. It's not about community service. It's not about doing good by your neighbor. They're only doing it for one reason, because it makes financial sense. What I love about short sales is they are typically a very, very clean sale. Title has to be clear. All of these things are done. So you get to the closing table, buyer can feel like, I shouldn't have any knocks on the door by someone saying, hey, you bought this REO, but they never should have done it because this property is still mine. I don't think that you should ever lose the argument that a short sale, when they're underwater, is infinitely more preferable than a foreclosure. But you're not going to recite from memory as easily as I do, because this is what I do for a living. But if you had a piece like this, a marketing piece like this that you can brand and put your information, then you could hand this out. This could be your cheat sheet. Well, I'm not giving this to you. This comes with the CDPE program. So when agents go through my class, they don't then only get the training, but they get access to forms and checklists and disclosures and certain marketing pieces as well. And I'm going to throw in a little extra today because I feel extra generous. Short sales are not for everyone, folks. The homeowner must qualify in 3 primary areas. They have to prove that they're in a hardship scenario. That means they're going through a difficult time. They should have a monthly income shortfall, which means that they have more month at the end of the money. There's not enough money coming in to cover everything that's going out. And last but not least, the ideal candidate for a short sale should be insolvent, which is a fancy word for broke. They shouldn't have tens of thousands of dollars sitting in savings accounts or IRAs or 401ks. Now, when it is an IRA or a 401k, the banks cannot seize those funds. Those are protected. But they can easily factor that into their decision as to whether they want to do a short sale or not. And it could impact the bank's decision to require some type of a contribution from the sellers, given that they are not necessarily an ideal candidate. I know I've hit you with a lot, but this is just a sampling of what I teach in my course. My question to you is, do you want to help homeowners and do you want to grow your business? Because we are talking about becoming a listings machine. People would ask, when they ask me, what do you teach me to do? Get more listings. I teach you how to get more listings. These just happen to be distressed property listings, but more listings, right? I teach the class live and in person. I don't have any schedule right now because it's summertime, but if you're an influencer in your market area, if you're a broker owner, or you know someone that is, with the right minimums, I'll fly out to where you're at and teach the class. Or I do have two other instructors that one of the two could also go out there. So there is the potential for live in-person training, depending upon the area and most importantly, the minimums. We do need a certain minimum. But you know what we don't need a minimum on, and you can get started right now? Online on demand. You can get started immediately online on demand at your pace from your home or your office to knock out these 6.25 hours of training, and not only get the training, but earn the designation at the end. The online is set up in module format. I have 23 modules. You take a brief quiz at the end of each segment and a final exam at the end. And when you do, you graduate. You're now a CDPE, and you're a CDPE for 1 year because our course includes the first year's membership in the CDPE. And it's a ridiculous $99 a year after that. So I haven't raised my price. In fact, it was $99 since 2008 and 9. I don't really feel motivated to have to charge anymore, right? Now, I do have a hybrid version. It's the best of both worlds. You can do it from home, you can do it from your office, but it's me teaching it live and not in person, but live, right? So you can ask questions, you can get content from some of the others. I have my next one starting in June. So if you say, you know what, I'm not in a hurry, I can wait to June, and I love the idea of over 3 days, 2.5 hours a day, you're doing what you're doing right now, Tony. You're sharing this with passion, you're teaching me, and I can ask questions and everything, great. Then the Zoom version may be better for you. Everything I just mentioned is $4.99, but you all can get $100 off because you put up with me for the past hour. But when you go to CDPE.com, you have to enter this special discount code, Zoom100. This code is good through the 27th of this month. If you don't do that, it's going to want to charge you $4.99. Anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Let me go check and see if you have any questions. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments that you want to unmute yourself and ask away? Got a couple of minutes. We can take some questions. I told you that I didn't want to keep you longer than an hour and I was going to come at you fast and furious. And if you feel like this is a little overwhelming, it's all good. I'm going to send out the recording to you all this afternoon anyway. Play it back to your heart's content and then share it with other people in your offices. So anybody else going once, twice? Again, CDPE.com, CDPE.com. When you go there, there's a host of other items that are included with your membership that I didn't want to take up time to talk to, but it's not just the forms and everything, it's the community that you'll belong to, the movement you'll belong to. and we are like-minded. We're all over the country, and we support each other. So I want to thank you for your time and attention. I hope that I've helped you to, I don't know, maybe become motivated to go out there, engage in this segment, help others, help yourselves. Thank you so very much. God bless. Take care.